I've heard these stories. I didn't go to Catholic school, but I grew up black in the South. And in our church, we had something that we called the mothers of the church. I don't know if they did that here, the mothers of the church, but these were the more seasoned church members. They didn't just get baptized, like they'd been there since they were 12, like back in the 1910s. They had just been there forever. And the mothers of the church, and we treated them with much reverence and respect, and they all came to church with their big church hats on, and they came in, if they had a cane, their cane would be wrapped in some kind of lace, and they always looked so beautiful and kind. We showed reverence and respect to the mothers of the church. And if it ever snowed, the deacons would get out together and say, hey, we need to go and shovel the snow for the mothers of the church because they can't get out and do it. And these were like the pillars of the church. And if you needed prayer, you went to the mothers of the church. And if you needed advice, if you needed anything, if maybe the pastor was doing something questionable or maybe stood up and said something that wasn't appreciated, it was the job of the mothers of the church to go and counsel him, like the mothers of the church. These were the mothers of the church on paper. You want to know who the mothers of the church were in real life? Mean. The mothers of the church were so mean. They always just had this scowl on their face, and you know how kids are. Kids are excited about life. Kids walk into a room, and no matter what's going on, they are happy, right? They come bouncing into a room, and if a kid bounced into a room and the mother of the church is there, they'd give him this look like, sit down and be quiet. There was this one mother of the church. I don't want to name her name. I do want to name her name. And I remember one day, I was in church, and I was in church with my grandmother. My grandmother was playing on the organ for the choir, and so I was sitting on the front pew, and the mother of the church usually sat like on the second pew, and I remember I was sitting there with her, and I remember I was unraveling a cough drop that my grandmother gave me, in fact. And as I'm unraveling this cough drop, now today cough drop comes in the quiet paper. Technology's gotten better. But back then it was like that loud wrapper. And this woman reached up and she pinched me on the back of my neck so hard. And she didn't just pinch me, she just held it. She just held it, and she just held it. And she just held it, and she just held it. And she's still holding it. Like, why did she do that to me? The mothers of the church were so mean. And just recently, on a recent trip home, talking to my mother, and I have to admit, they weren't all that way. They weren't all that way. There was one mother of the church, her name was Miss Sumter. I'll name her. The sweetest woman in the world. This woman, every time I go home, she prays for me still. She's got to be like 112 years old, and she's still praying for me. And she just grabs me tight, and I love this woman. She prays for me. But last time I was home, my mother was showing me pictures of where they celebrated her birthday, and the church members and celebrated her. And I was saying, man, such a great woman. Just really a great representation of the mothers of our church. And it surprised me. My mother said, yeah, she's the only one who's not mean. And I'm like, you think so too? Why is godliness associated with meanness? Why? Why are the righteous so rude and so contempt and so angry? Why are we too good and stuck up? Why are there people that we just don't want to talk to and be bothered with? Like, what happened? I don't want to get too political, but look at our world today. Why is it that the religious right, and again, I'm not criticizing anyone's politics, but why is it that people are known for their level of intolerance? And when I say intolerance, going back to this conference we just had for the last 2 weeks, I was praying, we were all eating lunch, and I was praying before my meal with my international counterparts, and one of them said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yes, I'm fine." They interrupted me while I was praying. I said, "Yes, I'm fine." Then I went back to praying, and they said, "What's wrong?" And I said, "Oh, I'm just praying before my food." And so the gentleman, he's from Europe, he said, "Are you a Christian?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, it hurt my heart, "I'm surprised to hear that." And I said, "Why?" And he said, and of course, every country isn't as Christian of a nation as the U.S. He said, "The impression we get about Christians on TV are that they're just not as kind as you." And I was like, "What?" And then one of my American coworkers chimed in and said, "Yes, I'm also surprised you're a Christian because you're not as intolerant as all the Christians that I see." And in my mind, I'm thinking, how have we become this way? How have we become this way? What happened? How is it that we are seen as that? And so the line has been blurred between what a Christian should be. Should we stand up for righteousness? Should we stand up for righteousness? Yes. Should we call sin sin? Should we have high standards for our lives, for our families, for our children? But why does that have to equal being mean and rude and contestable and too good? And I'm not talking to you, or, oh, did you see what she came to church wearing? And just shunning and just this level of contempt and staying far away from. I have this shirt that I like, and on the shirt it says, "Love wins." Josh, you and I had a conversation about this shirt before. It says, "Love wins." And I had a Christian friend pull me off to the side and said, "Why are you wearing that shirt?" And I was like, "What do you mean, why am I wearing that shirt?" And then he said, "You know that shirt is like, the shirt was from Old Navy." And he said, "That's Old Navy celebrating Pride Week. Why are you wearing that shirt?" You want to know why I bought that shirt? I was actually that month reading the book of Revelation. Anyone ever read Revelation? Yes. Do you know what the theme of Revelation is? Love wins. Yes. Love wins. And I was reading Revelation and I saw this shirt and I was like, I've got to have that shirt. And then my Christian friend is like, "Why are you wearing that shirt?" And I'm like, "Because love wins." And he's like, "No, it means this, this." And I'm like, when did this become what love means? You want to know what it is? You guys ever hear the term squatters' rights? Usually if you have a home and you abandon it and you leave it alone long enough, someone else can move in and then it becomes theirs and it's hard to put them out. You can't even call the police and ask the police to put them out. Such thing as squatters' rights. If you have a piece of land and someone comes and lives on that land, and if they live there long enough and the owners of the land don't say anything for a certain amount of time, this person now has squatters' rights. The church has abandoned love so long that everybody else has more of a claim to it than we do. You look at a TV show or a movie and they'll say it's a love story. But is it a story about being patient, being kind? Is it a story about long suffering, bearing all things, believing all things, enduring all things, hoping all things, not feeling? No, that's not what a love story anymore is. Because we've abandoned love so long that now the world has had squatters' rights on what love means. Now all of a sudden a love story isn't the story of Jesus. If a movie says love story, you're like, "Oh, what is this, Ruth? Oh, is it going to be about the 12 spies rescuing Rahab? Is that the love story we're getting ready to see?" No, that's not a love story anymore. Squatters' rights. We have literally abandoned who we are called to be, and we've moved into this other place, and now the lines have been blurred, and Christians are now only about the righteousness and the holiness and all of these things, and we've let it all go. The church, we've blurred the line. We don't love. We don't care. You look around this place, and there are people who are literally uncomfortable to be here. Josh, you've told the joke more than once. You have a buddy that you invited to church, and he said, "If I walk into the church, the whole place is probably going to fall down to the ground," right? Why does the world have that impression of us? You know what he should be thinking? I should go to church because I might get a hug. I should go to church because someone might invite me home for lunch. I should go to church because I feel really discouraged. I feel like my life isn't worth it. But instead, people say, "I don't want to go to church because I don't want to be judged." And again, we can make known what is right and what is righteous, but we can do it with love, because love does what? Covers a multitude of sins. Covers a multitude of sins. Now, I can feel the angst. I can feel the angst in what I'm saying from some of you, because you're just like, but that's just not what I've been trained to be as a Christian. But go on to that next verse. Look at what Paul continues to say. He gives examples of it. He says, "Cheerfully share your home with those who need a meal or a place to stay." We don't want the sinners in our home. We don't want their sin in our home. We don't want their influence in our home. We don't want to invite the person who, eats pork to sit down at our table with us. We don't want the person who curses and swears to come into our space. We won't have that. No. Paul says, cheerfully share your home with those who need a meal or a place to stay. Remember that, a place to stay. We'll come back. God has given each of you a gift from his variety of spiritual gifts. Use them well to do what? Serve one another. Why do our gifts just stay in here? We're just serving ourselves. People come to church and they do the welcome and they greet people and they give a hug and a kiss. All of these spiritual gifts are staying in the church. We're not serving the world. I asked my friend about his impression of Christians from overseas that I just met, and he said he reads about how they stand outside the abortion clinics and try to scare and intimidate people and treat them meanly. And it's like, wow, that's really what you think of us. That's really who he thinks that I am. It says share, serve. Go on to the next one for me. It says, do you have the gift of speaking? Then speak as though God himself were speaking through you. But how many times do Christians speak with love? How many of us have family members who know us as Christians and all they think about is how much we condemn them, how much we put them down, how much we coyly say things like, well, if you gave your life to Jesus, you wouldn't have that problem anymore. Condemning and condoning and taking God, and instead of using it as a way to bless, we use it as a tool to hurt. How many times do we say, well, the only reason your life is like that is because of, and though it might be true, why not instead say, the only reason your life like that is because you didn't go to church? Say, hey, I know you're not feeling well. Why not come to church and see if you can get encouraged or cheered up? Or just instead of telling them to come to church, be that church, be the love, be what they need. Speak as though you're speaking for God himself. It says, do you have the gift of helping others? Or if you look, instead of do you have the gift of helping others, it's saying, do you have the gift of the opportunity to help someone? Some of you might say, I don't have the gift of speaking, but do you have the gift of the opportunity to speak to someone? Do you have the gift of the opportunity to help others? It says, if so, do it with all of your strength and all the energy that God supplies. Instead of being too good to be bothered, then everything you do will bring glory to God through Jesus Christ. Not calling them out, not shunning them, not stepping on them, not being mean or rude, not telling everybody about them behind their backs. That doesn't bring glory to God. Loving them does. Again, go with me to Colossians 4. Paul is counseling this level of love. He says, live wisely among those who are not believers. Not get away from them, not back off, not don't talk to them. Live wisely among them and make the most out of every opportunity. Make the most. And look what he says. Let your conversation be what? Gracious, seasoned with salt, so that you will have the right response for everyone. That seasoned with salt. Why did he say that? Let your conversation be gracious. The goal is to bring out the best in others in your conversation. Not put them down, not cut them out. That's what salt does. It brings out the best of the flavor of your food, does it not? You could have something simple like a piece of broccoli. You know, it's not awesome. You put a little sprinkle of salt on it, right? And it's the same broccoli, right? Season your conversation with salt. Bring out the best in others. Don't cut them out. You know what else salt does? It preserves. Salt preserves. Season your conversation with salt. Preserve the relationship. Preserve the person's life. Preserve. Like salt. God's word should be doing that. But why are we so mean? Why are we so mean? Now, again, I know that this has a little bit of angst and it just seems against our nature. And when I say that this is what we are called to do in Christ, let me literally give you an example of Christ. So let's wrap up with the book of Luke. Luke chapter 15 reads, tax collectors and other what? Notorious sinners often came to listen to Jesus teach. This made the Pharisees and teachers of religious law. This made the church. This made the folks at our Father's house of worship. This made the mothers of the church and the nuns and all of them. This made the teachers, the Pharisees, the teachers, the religious law, the preachers. They complained that he was associating with such sinful people, even eating with them. Wow. Do you see what Jesus is doing? He's making the church angry because he's living this life. And so Jesus told them a story. And in fact, he told 3 stories. The story